And I'd now like to call upon Eamon Sweeney to propose the motion to the House.
Gentlemen of the University Philosophical Society, members of the College Historical Society, members of the floor, allow me to distract you for a moment and let me talk about why I'm a big fan of Facebook tag groups, and let me get to my points then. So there's these groups online, and there's examples of them like, that's it, I'm king shaming, or not only am I king shaming, I'm also calling the ISPCA. Sounds like you should step back from the that edge, which was what I was told when I decided to use that intro. Sounds gay, I mean, sounds like your analysis needs more nuance, but okay, it's something we should probably use in the chamber a bit more often. But one I'd like to link back to a few times in this speech is, I feel personally attacked by this relatable content. Because I was recently on a plane, I was tired, I was coming home after being away for quite a while, so I was a little bit emotionally vulnerable. On the in-flight entertainment system was the movie Love, Simon. And I've seen Love, Simon, and I know the plot, and for anyone who doesn't know, it's about a guy who's just like you, which is kind of code for, he's not your typical gay man. He's a teenager and he's not out. But I'd seen it already, I thought I was ready for the feels, because there's lots of emotional scenes in this film. 2 hours into the flight attendant comes over to me and with a tissue, and I was gone. There's lots of feelings. There was one line in particular that got me, and it was, I'm done living in a world where I don't get to be who I am. I'm living in a world where labels are restrictive and prescriptive for how you behave, is living in a world where you don't get to be who you are. So what I'm going to do in this speech, I'm going to talk about what labels mean, and what they mean in the context of this debate, and in particularly to do with the LGBT community. I'm going to talk about why this isn't great, and why they have soft coercive power in terms of how people behave, and why that's restrictive to people in terms of being who they are. And also I want to talk about hierarchies within the LGBT community, and why they can be harmful, and why labels create hierarchies within the community, and why they shut out certain people, and in particular certain vulnerable people from the community. So what labels mean? So labels, as I'm going to use them, are words that attach connotations beyond their literal meaning. And they're also labels that you are expected to fall into. So they're restricted, limited sets of labels which you are expected to fit into. So if you're a man who has sex with men, you're expected to fit into certain categories like a twink, an otter, or a bear. You should probably label yourself, you're actively encouraged to label yourself using one of those words. You definitely need to decide, oh, am I a top or a bottom or a verse? Or else if you're unsure, it's people give you a funny look. There's a great quote from an ex-His MC, Conor O'Malley, that you can be both a twink and a daddy. That's called intersectionality. It's a funny quote that Conor woke man O'Malley thinks that's how intersectionality works, but also it's kind of indicative in terms of how many wows that got when it was posted online, that we do set boundaries between different things, that you can do one thing and not the other, and how that can be restrictive. So I've already hinted at this, but now I'm going to get to where I talk about why this isn't great. Because there's soft coercive power that comes with labels and living in a world with labels. So when I, by virtue of my sexuality, have a label attached to me, there's an expectation exists about my behaviour beyond what that label literally means. If I'm a gay man, I'm probably expected to glitter. I'm probably expected to Carly Rae Jepsen. I'm expected to be a fan of Drag Race. And some of those things might be true. I think Emotion is one of the most iconic albums of all time. But I'm not a big fan of Drag Race. There exists this subtle coercion to fit into a label that you must conform to other stuff that society expects of you. And that all sounds pretty small, low level, but insofar as people have to reconcile their sexual identity with the rest of their identities, and that people are complex and multifaceted, the fact that we set up these labels that have deep layers of meaning beyond just what they literally mean, and there's an expectation, a code of behaviour that you to fit in, it makes it a bit harder for people to come out, and it makes it a bit harder for people to engage with the LGBT community generate. Like, there's a reason we see so few LGBT sports stars. There's a reason why there's like no out GAA players in Ireland at the moment. Like, part of it is the baggage that comes with these labels, that people are complex, and like Simon in the film of Simon, he finds it difficult to reconcile a sexual identity with the baggage that comes with the label of being gay. And like with the connotations that come with that. People are complex, so are gay people. So when we choose to live in a world with labels, we make it harder for vulnerable LGBT people to come out. I mean, like, not everyone lives in liberal Dublin. Not everyone gets to go to a university like Trinity, where there is like a liberal atmosphere and people can feel that they can be who they want to be. And like a second time when I like felt like I was personally attacked by some label content was when Neil Radker gave an interview where he came out and he said, I don't want to just be known as a gay politician. It's not something that defines me. Because like people like gay people are more complex than just one aspect of their identity. And I like that makes visibility more difficult when people have to take the baggage of the label with them. When people have to take that baggage with them, it makes it harder for them to reconcile the rest of their identity. I think visibility is incredibly important for the LGBT community, which means it's important that as many people from as many different communities can be visible as possible. When we attach this baggage to it, we make that more difficult. Onto hierarchy is very brief. I'll take a POI if anyone wants to offer one. Cool. Onto hierarchies within the LGBT community. So like within the LGBT community, some people are heard more than others. That's by virtue like people. It's like power and visibility. It's important that we're not prescriptive to what a good gay looks like. There shouldn't be like one idea of what a good gay looks like. As in like a good gay, like in some people's eyes, should be a socialist. It should probably be like do the things I talked about earlier, like drag race. They should probably advocate for certain kind of politics over other kinds of politics beyond simple advocating for the advancement of LGBT equality. Like it's not, for some people it's just not good enough for there to be a gay Taoiseach. It has to be the right kind of gay. I think that's incredibly disruptive. It's bad because it means that some people are seen to be mediocre gays or bad gays who are bad to the community. And I think that means there's some LGBT people who are less likely to access support. They're less likely to go to things like Pride. They're less likely to be able to advocate for things that are good for LGBT people. And it means at a very fundamental level, those people are less likely to be out in their communities, less likely to be okay with themselves when we attach baggage to labels. A world without labels is a world where people are better able to be who they want to be, and therefore I beg you to propose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sweeney. I would now like to call upon Lizzy Younger to continue or to make the case for the opposition.
Mr. Chair, Madam Auditor, ladies and gentlemen of the Cultural Historical Society. I'm going to oppose the notion that this House would live in a world with no labels, and I'm going to talk to you about why I think that labels are often a good thing, and they don't merit being totally demonised or totally eliminated from our society. Whilst they are sometimes undoubtedly used to oppress or to discriminate, there are also some benefits to them, and I believe that totally throwing the baby out with the bathwater wouldn't actually be a good thing. I think that some benefits to labels are that people have the right to self-definition and to label themselves how they so choose. Not labelling ourselves won't necessarily eliminate discrimination and oppression in our society, and we should work harder on more meaningful ways to do that. And labels can also be helpful when promoting marginalised groups in certain sectors of society and identifying disproportionate impacts of certain policies on different groups. And plus, if we have no labels, then we have nothing to label gender quotas with, and then we end up with debates with 8 men on a Thursday night. So, just in response to one point that Eamon made there, that living in a world with no labels would also mean that we cannot label ourselves how we so wish, should we wish to. And I'm not saying that you would have to label yourself, with a certain prescriptive statement, but if you did wish to and you did find that those labels kind of fitted what you see as yourself, you should be able to. And if people want to identify with people who have similar experiences than they should be free to. And living in a world with no labels would make that harder for people to do. But onto my main points. People do have a right to self-define, and they have a right to seek out similar people if they so wish. And labels don't necessarily have to be a bad thing, and they aren't a plot necessarily to ostracize or divide anyone, but they can be used by people to seek out people with shared experiences. I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert on many different communities. I am not, and it would be offensive for me to suggest that I have an experience of a group of people that I am not part of, and vice versa. So, but if people would like, if people don't want my opinion on a certain thing, then they should be free to label a group discussion as maybe, for the people who actually have that experience and for people who actually know what they're talking about. And if people want to go to be educated, then they should be able to. But people, if you don't label things, sometimes you end up with people getting involved when they really don't have a place to, and taking over discussions, which I think labels are sometimes helpful in preventing. And self-determination overall in many different circumstances in life is a good thing. For instance, in the Good Friday Agreement, I'm a history student, which was an improvement on the previous Anglo-Irish Agreement, which fell apart due to the lack of provision for people to self-identify as British, Irish or both, and led to the decline of peaceful negotiations on that front. And the inability to set out one's identity on one's own terms would make people uncomfortable, I would have thought, and feel unsafe. And so I think that even if labels as they stand today don't encompass all experiences that people have, then people should be free to come up with new labels for themselves and new ways of defining themselves, which are equally valid as existing labels. But totally getting rid of existing labels, I don't think would be helpful. It just maybe that we don't have sufficient numbers yet, so they're not necessarily a bad thing. But also, as a second point, in a world with no labels, we wouldn't label any of our identifying characteristics, and many of which have historically and are currently undeniably being used to discriminate against and oppress people with those immutable characteristics. And the lack of formal labels wouldn't eliminate labels altogether. People would continue to use them on an informal basis, more than likely, and would continue to lead to informal discrimination. That would look very similar to the discrimination we see today, but would be more difficult to police and enforce and label, if you like. And these immutable characteristics, which people would no longer be able to define in this world that we're proposing with no labels, would include many of the current protected characteristics under the Equal Status Acts. These include sex, sexual orientation, race, membership of the travelling community, religious belief, and disability status. And if we cannot define ourselves where appropriate to define these characteristics, then it would surely be far more difficult to call out discrimination based on those characteristics when it does happen, and when it happens due to those characteristics. So what I would see in this world that is proposed of no labels would be that discriminatory violence would still continue to happen because there are, people aren't great. A lot of people do hold these awful beliefs, and it is okay to discriminate and be violent against people due to something that is inherent to them. But that violence in this world would be harder to define, it would be harder to police, and it would be harder to prosecute, and it would be harder to bring people to justice for many of the same actions which would be carried out regardless of which world we are living in, whether it's the current one or the proposed one that is. But labels can also be helpful in terms of promoting marginalised groups in areas that they are underrepresented in. For instance, we currently have, in many countries around the world, a shameful lack of women in politics, women as our elected representatives, and there are several proposed ways of rectifying this. For instance, gender quotas for general election candidates. If we have no labels for, say, people who self-identify as one gender or another, then we wouldn't be able to enforce gender quotas as effectively. It would be far more difficult to do so, and I would believe in that circumstance it would likely lead to a further decline in the number of women that we have elected as our public representatives. And we also, not just in politics, but in other areas as well, such as STEM fields, scholarships for women in STEM and other oppressed groups in the sciences. It necessitates some sort of label being applied to these people in order to be able to promote them and to promote their contributions to science in a way that we would not be able to do if we have no labels. But also, just as a final kind of quick point, if we didn't have any labelling in formal contexts, we won't be able to tell if some demographic groups, such as the protected characteristics I mentioned earlier, for instance the travelling community, are disproportionately affected by certain policies. This is actually the case in France at the moment. They take very little information about demographic groups in their censuses, which means that if a policy is unjustly and unfairly and disproportionately affecting often already marginalised groups, it is very difficult to tell from censuses, and it's very difficult to do something about. So, in conclusion, for the reasons I've outlined, namely self-definition, failing to eliminate discrimination, promoting marginalised groups, and identifying discriminatory trends in society, I would ask you to oppose the motion that this House would live in a world with no labels.
Just before we hear from our next speaker, I'd like to make two short announcements. The first is a reminder to fill out your oratory returns for the speakers you've heard so far. And the second is that at the end of the main debate, we'll be having two floor speeches. So this is where a member of the audience can give a shorter speech, 4 minutes in length, on either side, so proposition or opposition. If you would like to give such a speech, please write your name and the side you'd like to speak on a piece of paper and hand it up to the front, and we'll announce our floor speakers later in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call on our guest, Mr. Paddy Smyth, to continue the argument for the proposition.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I am not an academic. I'm quite thick academic. So I'm not going to sit here and give you facts and figures, because I will not beat you and get myself to talk about. But what I can give you is life experience. I am a walking limb. I am disabled. I'm also gay. Yeah? These are labels that society has put on me without any fault of my own. They have decided that I'm disabled. I am less than that. I'm a second-class citizen. I have tried to drive with a disabled car 3 times in my life. The first 2 times I tried to drive, the school of driving would not allow me to pick the lessons that I wanted to have in the evening time. Because the only lessons available to a disabled person were in working hours. This means that society thinks disabled people cannot work and thus should only be able to drive within those times, labelling me as a lesser than citizen, not able to work because of what I was born with, not because of what I'm capable of. Yeah? Labels make you prejudge. They give you a perception. When I walked into you all today, you perceived me as something. Probably, oh, isn't he inspirational? Look at him, isn't he great? Look at him going hopping around. I could be an absolute dickhead. Because of the label and because of what you've decided, you think I'm fabulous. That's unjust. It's unfair. And that's what we need to change. Another thing, I'm in the workforce. Being disabled and gay hasn't been easy to get a job. I once had an interviewer say to me, will I be able to discipline you if needed? Because I would feel nervous disciplining you with your disability. Once again, labelling that I wouldn't be able to discipline, that you would be scared to discipline me. This is why I urge you that labels should not be in our society. It's making out that because of something I was born with or my sexual orientation that I am a lesser than you. Yeah? And everywhere you look in society, in the world, labels are jammed down your throat. Yeah? And you're quite trying to put into a box because I sleep with a man, or if I sleep with a woman, or if I walk with crutches, or if I'm in a wheelchair. Who gives who the right to compartmentalise what you are as a person? Because what you are as a person isn't a label, it's what inside that counts. And yes, you should be able to label yourself if you want to, if you decide that I want to be that label, but the world shouldn't decide you are that label because you look like this, or because you're black, or because you're this, and you're gay. I'll tell you this now. Do you think a person of a traveller background, they could be the smartest person in this room, but if they told you they're from a travelling background, you would write them off straight away, and they would not be able to stand up here? How fair is that? Ask yourself. Would they get the same opportunities you can? Would you allow them the same opportunities that you get? Or would you judge them and label them and say, no, they're from the travelling community, they don't deserve to be in Trinity? Would you think that? That's something you need to ask them, and that's what labels do. Labels have been doing that to me my entire life. They have made me feel like I've always had to fight. Every turn I go to, I have to fight that I'm more. Because as soon as you look at me as less. My own father said to me, what will you be able to do with your life if you're disabled? That's what he said to me. He turned around, he's like, well, what could you do though? What can you do? He was not willing to see what I was capable of, but only willing to see the labels that society gave me. Yeah, and he decided that, he said to me one time, he's like, I'm going to build a house. I'm going to build a little granny flat. Now, imagine me in a little granny flat, please. I am more glam than that. But he wanted to build a granny flat, and he said, I'm going to put a granny flat there, and you'll be on disability benefit, and that will be your life. Yeah? And we can look after you, and when I go, your mum can be there. And that's because he labelled me. He labelled me that I wouldn't be able to work. That I'm a person of society that just is being, but can't give to society. And that's what my own father did. This is why I'm urging you to get rid of labels. Because labels, like you preconceive what people are, they hinder society. Yes? And they hinder what someone can be. I've gone through years of oppression of who I am and thinking that I'm not good enough because of what society has done to me. Yeah? And imagine if my own family were even labelling me and not being able to see what I was capable of. My own blood were labelling me. Imagine what society does to those people who are labelled like myself. If I went to a radio interview the other day and we were speaking about racism and sexism and all of that kind of stuff, and it really brought to light what badness labelling has done to this world, and how we have allowed the labels to kind of construct our life. And we've built this kind of society where this guy's a straight white male, this woman's a sexy blonde secretary, yeah, and this person's a disabled gay guy. These labels, but you don't actually know who the person is inside. You're judging them on the label alone. And that is where the fair part of it is. And that's why I think labels don't need to be there. I should be allowed to learn to drive a car whenever I want. I should be allowed to go for whatever job I want. Also, on the opposite end, I almost got a job because I was disabled. That's even worse. They go, I'm not even joking you, a big organisation said that we'd like to bring you on because you're diverse. We have a diverse programme for people like you. Yeah, for people like you. What does that even mean for people like me? Do you know if I can do the job? Do you know what academics I have? Do you know what experience I have? No, they were going to bring me on because I was disabled and gay. And I ticked a box because of that label. And that is unfair and unjust. It's not right. Because who am I to do a job just because I'm disabled? You know, what is that? The labels have done that. And I just really feel that to have a labelless society and for you to be able to decide what label you are is such a fairer constitution. And I think in this society that we're in today, like gender neutrality, like I think that's where it needs to go. And I think labels hinder that and stop that. And I think that if we don't change it now, or if we don't try to change it now, then what about the generation after us? Will labelling always be, you know, a bullying tactic? Will labelling always be, you know, something that hinders you, that makes you feel less? Or why not make labelling nothing anymore? Because the power of labelling is in society. We give words like disability, gay, you know, traveller. We give them the power. Society, we make them powerful. Yeah? If we get rid of them words, if we take away the power, then labels don't have power anymore. And I think that's where this needs to go. So I would really, really urge you to get rid of labels and think about the stories I've told you today. Think about what it would be like for you to be disabled and not be able to get a job because you're disabled, not be able to get a car or drive when you want to drive, and learn when you want to drive when you're disabled. To be thought of as a lesser than person because of the label. To be thought of as not good enough because of the label. Thank you for your time today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Paddy Smyth, and I'd now like to invite Casper Kurpan to continue the argument for the opposition.
When I was 11, I refused to use face moisturizer. And I did so because someone had told me that doing that was gay and feminine. And at that stage of my life, I didn't want to be gay and I didn't want to be feminine, because if you're gay and you're feminine, other kids didn't want to play with you. I was growing up with a belief that avoiding anything that was considered not to be masculine was going to magically turn me straight. That was going to solve the problem with me being gay. This was not going to be like the case anymore. When I was 14, I remember walking home from school and seeing a huge poster saying, "Homosexuals want to march the streets of our city again. We must stop them. We must stop them, as being gay was a crime and had to be stopped by the collective of people I was different to." I have heard multiple boys, men, teenagers, who say that they have been called fake gays, or they consider themselves to be fake gays. They have been called that because they hadn't engaged with the form of activities considered to be gay. And I'm not talking here about having sex with men. For some people, it's not gay enough. They didn't watch musicals. They didn't watch musicals. They didn't watch Glee. They didn't dance. They didn't cook. They stopped themselves from participating in this kind of activities because those things they had labeled gay on them. They would have enjoyed those things, but they're trying to fit in into society and expectations that were put on them so much that they refused to do so. The reason for that is. You're probably wondering why am I speaking on the opposite of this debate. Well, the reason for that is that the labels themselves, they're not the problem. The problem is homophobia and misogyny. The problem is a toxic masculinity. The problem is raising boys in belief that the only way to behave and the only way to succeed in life is by acting, is by being masculine. The problem is gender discrimination and fear of straight men that by other men engaging in activities primarily assigned for the female gender, those activities are going to be recognized and considered equally legitimate and important as those primarily reserved for men. The men in power are afraid that the gender balance will change and shift as the male privilege would work out. I don't think the labels are the problem. The problem is the assumption that some labels are more important than others. The problem is the assumption that every single child is going to turn it straight if raised in the way appropriate to their sex. The problem is soaking children in shame of doing things inappropriate to their gender. I remember how ashamed I felt when Santa Claus came to my kindergarten. He was handing gifts to kids. He was giving cars to boys, and he was giving dolls to girls. I didn't like playing with cars, and my mom, knowing that, made sure that I would receive a doll. And I was the only person, I was the only boy who did receive a doll. And that was, I felt incredibly ashamed for that reason, that I didn't belong. I was not acting the same way as the rest of the group, as the rest of the boys. We teach kids that they have to adjust to the way that, other boys do, and we have to do it. If you're a boy, you have to do what other boys do, and if you're a girl, you have to do what other girl does. When you decide to label yourself as either lesbian, gay, bi, transsexual, transgender, etc., you become the part of a group. You enlarge that group, and by having the bravery of coming out and putting that label on yourself, you give hope for other queer people out there that they're represented. The number of people who are actually marching in Pride every year is increasing. And it's increasing because people are brave enough to, label themselves, and even if they know the consequences, they decide to come out and participate in the gay culture. Under the status quo, so many rights of queer people are being refused. If we decide to get rid of any labels, we cannot actively fight and advocate for those rights that are reserved only for the straight part of the society. We are all people, but we are not all equal. We have different rights and life expectancies depending on our gender and our sexual orientation. If we decide to get rid of the labels, we simply refuse to acknowledge those differences. We simply refuse equality of opportunities that everyone should have a right to. We give up in the fight for social and structural change. The labels give the ones who are marginalized a feeling of safety. I go to gay clubs because if I went to a straight club and I tried to kiss a boy and I tried to dance with a boy, I might be insulted, I might be beaten. I have to, because so many people are still homophobic, and those kind of activities would not be accepted in many countries, in many clubs, even in Dublin. As a gay man, you don't hope for meeting the love of your life, doing groceries, because you can't approach other men in the shop for obvious reasons, right? You have to use. Sure.
How are people safer when they struggle to reconcile their identities with the baggage that comes with the labels that I talked about?
I will get into that in this speech, but yeah, I'll get into that in a second. We need to, as gay men, we have to use dating like gay dating apps, and that's the only way for many of us to actually actively go and engage with other men and meet other people. Unfortunately. The labels give us safety. They let us gather together and create a group around the experiences we all share. Being a part of the gay community is a unique experience. Once you label yourself, you decide, to be out and proud. You become a part of a group of people who know how you feel, a group of people who support you, and a group of people who know what you went through, what you were going through, and what you possibly will be going through. The gay community and LGBT movement could only start because some people who knew of the consequences that are coming with labeling yourself decided to do so. They decided to label themselves, they decided to come out in the times when for being gay, you were sent to prison and your rights were simply refused. The way we see the labels have changed and evolved so much. And it's in our own perspective and beliefs that underpin all the labels, and it's up to us to make everyone included, but also not afraid to put a label on themselves. It is ridiculous to expect people to come out when we know that there is a real threat to their lives, but we cannot undermine the bravery of those who do so. Those were the ones, thank you whom I can stand here and say that I am gay, out, and proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Casper. I'd now like to call on Nathan O'Gara to continue the argument with the proposition.
Hi, Nathan. As this is your first time speaking in the chamber, you're entitled to what we call names rights. And this means that if you choose to retain them, nobody can offer you a POI. However, you can choose to waive these rights, and we'll greet you with a thunderous round of applause. What would you like to do?
I'm going to waive the rights.
Excellent. Also, just a brief reminder that we are accepting floor speeches this evening and that we're looking for one person to speak on the opposition. So if you'd like to write your name on a piece of paper and hand it up to the front. Thank you. Nathan.
Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished guests, for today's debate, I will be mostly drawing on my experiences as, let me go through all the labels first, mixed race, transgender, bisexual, biromantic, I guess. I have to have a whole list because there's so many. Autistic, working class, fit non-binary man, and there are a lot of problems with having that many labels put upon you. Labels are forced upon us and only give preconceived notions of what our identities are, forcing us to categorize ourselves into different boxes to neatly fit into people's ideas of who we should be. When I tell you all those labels, you have a bunch of ideas about me. You probably ask yourself what kind of mixed race, that sort of thing. You probably say transgender, that makes sense with all this colored hair. But it just, sorry. Fixed categories and labels impose ideas of what people's personal experiences should be. Nobody's experiences are the same, and to all have one label just confuses everyone. The consequence of forcing people to use whatever label is closest to their experience of sexuality or gender only forces others to make assumptions about how their experiences have been in life. When I say I'm bisexual, someone else will think, oh, just like my friend who's bi, but we could have completely different experiences due to other cultural backgrounds, other statuses, and that sort of thing. And for people newly exploring their LGBT identity and don't fully fit in with the label that is closest, resembles their experiences, will feel an obligation to conform to the label that's put upon them and what's expected of them. And being in a community built around labeling your identity in such a way leads to a fear that not conforming to those preconceived notions of who you should be due to the label, be it lesbian or non-binary or whatever label that you have, will lead to being ostracized by the people that are supposed to support you. Such labels allow for no room for exploration of your own identity. They're fixed categories. There's shame in having a label and then changing your mind a year later just because everyone already has these ideas about you and has an idea of who you should be. And in these communities, you conflate your identity with a label instead of your label being a reflection of the identity that you have. For the most part, in fact, we don't even choose our labels. Most of us learn our labels when someone yells at us in the street or someone identifies us by saying, you know, the half-caste one over there, that sort of thing. And there is power in identifying with these labels, but for the most part, specifically LGBT labels and categories are based on a Western understanding of sexual identity that cannot apply to everyone. It's just imported from America and can sometimes apply to the Irish experience, but for the most part, when you're reading articles, they don't apply to other countries. They don't apply to anyone else's cultural experiences. They only reflect Western identities, and the dominance of these labels in our lives ignore the diversity of sexual identities, as well as ignoring other gender non-conforming people of other cultural experiences. The labels and categories are too simplistic and cannot account for the diversity of lived experiences, as I have already said. Forcing labels misrepresents us and fails to capture our experiences that we have had being marginalized because of our sexuality or gender. But in a way, labels can be positive, but I would say speak in a political context. the visibility that they help bring helps us towards legal recognition and bringing people together for social justice. But forcing people to explicitly label themselves in social constructs does more harm than good. For example, if you're the term person of color in everyday social situations erases its very specific political background and diminishes its political power, it's no good to use a label without understanding its purpose. To use a label like POC to refer to someone like me in a general context, as in, oh, that's Nathan, he's a POC, would completely erase the fact that I'm half Chinese and that experience is completely incomparable to, say, a black man's experience. Labels like that paint all experiences as the same and do not recognize the difference that we all face. This misuse of labels actively prevents dialogue and erases different identities and experiences. It can be positive to have labels as a self-identifier, but overall, when things are thrust upon us, they just do more harm than good. They're preconceived notions of who we are, and for the most of us, we don't choose them. It's just what we're born to and not a name chosen for ourselves. They impact our lives negatively, and the situations in which they are positive are very specific, as I said, in political context. And a world without labels would be positive for the exploration of people with different identities who will no longer feel like they have to conform to the label that they've been presented with because it best closely represents their experience, even though it could be completely off that. And also, a world without labels would reduce the ratio of different cultural experiences of sexuality and gender.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I would now like to call on Catherine Kelly to continue the argument for the opposition.
So, Eamon and Nathan gave wonderful speeches tonight, in which, well, so did also Paddy. Sorry, that's my name. Everyone spoken on the bench without naming them, but no. Eamon and Nathan specifically spoke about baggage and labels and preconceptions and how difficult it can be to reconcile stereotypes with the labels you might like to choose for yourself. And I do think that is something we have to concede on our side, that labels have a lot of baggage associated with them, and that is bad. But as a bisexual woman, I'd rather be able to choose my own labels and say, I'll take my bi-woman baggage than take the straight woman baggage that I think would be assumed of me if I were not able to choose my own label for myself. Labels are different. Power structures dictate that cisgender and straight is the norm in the society in which we live. And I think we're always going to have difficulty in that society, labels or no. And for me, labels offer some kind of solace in a world in which my experience is diminished. When I was 13, I realised I liked girls. I'd already realised that I'd liked boys. And I know that it's not particularly radical to realise at that age that you're bisexual or unusual at all. But in all the media I've seen, it happened way sooner. I suppose, all of the media I'd seen featuring gay and lesbian men and women, they realised earlier, because apparently, that's how it works. Like Macklemore, they, maybe they could draw, or, they had a gay uncle, or they kept their room tidy, which I'm told is some of the criteria. And I suppose that I had loved, Alyssa Milano's hair. She had a pixie cut in Charmed, it was really good. And I did want that at the time. I had longer hair then, otherwise that would have been labels, they're not perfect. And I will get to that, but for me, they gave me an entry point into understanding my own experience of my sexuality and a solidarity with those with whom I shared that experience. Because my process with realising I was bi was a bit confused. I actually came out as lesbian first, because I didn't really know what was going on, and I was like, there's a lot, So I do understand labels, they have their downfalls, but before I came out as anything, I was already labelled as straight. And for me, the label of bi gave me a sense of myself as a 13-year-old who fancied her best female friend, and also the boy in her guitar class. And it exposed me to so many things which helped me to understand that experience. It exposed me to, like it or hate it, Tumblr threads. It exposed me to slam poetry about that experience. It exposed me to music. It exposed me to the Kinsey scale, and made me realise I was apparently swinging on a scale. Who knew? And it gave me people to talk to about the experience that I had had, whether that was shouting about it in protests or just quiet conversations with people who had similar experiences to me. And the truth is that in a world without labels, I don't know how I would have found any of those things. I don't know how I would have found that sense of belonging, or that sense of solidarity, or even just the simple resources of literally a Tumblr thread that just, links you to loads of different places on Tumblr. I know it sounds small, but it was a big thing for me. And I suppose I'll always remember when I was 14, my friend introduced me to someone at a party, and I think she was trying to make a connection for me, and she was like, Catherine Carr's a lesbian, and it was like, Catherine's bi, and it introduced me. And I remember Cara said, oh, well, we were all bisexual once. That felt pretty bad, to have my identity, the label that I had chosen for myself, taken away from me. Because suddenly my identity was just a straight woman on the path to something else. That wasn't how I felt, and that isn't a positive experience of a label. But worse would be a world in which I didn't have my label, and in which after that I couldn't say, no, I am bi, sorry, I am, and in which I didn't know other bi people who I could have that conversation with. Because I believe that dominant power structures and norms are always going to take standing up to and smashing, and someone's always going to make assumptions about you, particularly when we're talking about the LGBT community. It's unfortunate, but it's status quo. But at least in a world with labels, I can stand against anyone who assumes that I'm anything but how I want to be identified and how I want to label myself. And I can stand not only by myself and proudly say who I am, but I can stand with other people who share that experience with me. My label gives me somewhere to stand. Labels are not easy. They're ultimately groupings made by dominant power structures in society, and they're always going to fall down on the basis of that. But in a world where those power structures exist, and unless we're also smashing the patriarchy and the gender binary, which I'm sure I think they are still going to exist, I would rather have my experience of having a path into understanding who I was. Because I think that to decry labels in an attempt to escape oppression is to leave the oppression where it is, and to leave yourself without what for me has been a key mechanism of understanding and dealing with that experience. And I just can't express to you today how much it has meant to me for me to be able to speak here tonight. And to speak here tonight and tell you guys that I'm a bisexual woman. I mean, that's not a secret, but you know what I mean? Labels, for me, have given me a lot of personal comfort. And I know that's not going to be the experience of everyone in that debate, and I would never like to say that that is the case. But for me, a world with labels is a world that's better off. And I look forward to hearing the remainder of the speeches tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Now the final speaker for the proposition is Jan Blake.
Sorry, Jan, just before you begin, I'd like to announce the two floor speakers we have this evening. So on proposition we have Catherine O'Brien, and on opposition we have Ben White. In addition, Jan, this is also your first time speaking in the main debate in the chamber, so it's not. I really apologise, you're not entitled to things, right? That's fine. Sorry. Of course, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Take a step back, if only for 7 minutes, and get comfortable in your chair. Some of you may know or think they know me, but you don't know who I am. And if you really think so, you may be wrong. What age am I? What is my sexuality, my gender? But without knowing all this, it will not stop yourself sticking labels to me. Dozens of labels every second I stand in front of you. Okay, let's do an experiment. And what if I was putting labels on you? You there. You're a girl. I'm sure you've got long hair. You over there. You straight, you've got a barrel here. You, at the back, you close the last button of your shirt, so you pay. I've just said aloud what you all here think every day in whisper. And it shocks you, it's not. So, if this is the case, that means you're all against labels. The day is over, this house won the motion. So yeah, we must be realistic, cannot prevent humans to create the least label. But we must learn to go away from them. When I talk about labels, I'm talking about social labels, kind of a metaphor used as a method of distinguishing between one person and the next. Labels are certainly ways to gather, but to exclude first, because it is the first one that leads the second. They sound fine when simply spoken. Calling someone white or black isn't going to cause them cringe or breakdown and despair. But it's actually the very existence of these labels that encourage the stereotypes, and then the language, and then the jokes, and then the opinion, and then the judgments. In philosophy, we distinguish since Aristotle, essence and existence. Essence is the nature of the individual, and existence is to be. We could add to that the appearance, which is either reality or illusion, according to the perception proper to each. The label would therefore be a representation of the existence, so incomplete, or an illusion, so false. But it never represents the individual in his entirety. The labels, unlike at the supermarket, do not provide correct information. A heterosexual couple walking in the park with a smiling child will have, let's be realistic, a better label than a couple of two women in the same situation. What you don't know is that the husband of the heterosexual couple beats his wife, who has become addicted to alcohol, so the child lives in extremely difficult family circumstances, whereas both women are irreproachable. The labels were wrong. The same goes for women who likes a young man, a cougar, for a man a pedophile, a homosexual mind a sodomite, across a mental degenerate. That's what labels do. They lie and hurt people.
You said earlier that the labels were wrong. It's not the labels that were wrong, it's the description that was attached to them. The label, like the fact that I identify as a lesbian didn't create my sexuality and didn't create the discrimination that I suffer as a result of it. That's a completely different issue.
But the problem is that you've got, with labels, a whole package, a whole box that goes with it. And this is where it starts, what I said, the stereotypes that goes with labels earlier on. I'll continue on with my speech. So those labels do wrong and hurt people. I'm not afraid to name these realities. I do not care if you're rich, poor, right or left wing, how much you have in your bank account, your religion. This is not the essence of who you are. Labels also lead to sort of sectarism. Let me explain. There is a phenomenon of self-labeling. When one thinks they're labelled, one takes the front and close themselves into what they expect society to reject them for. Before settling in Dublin, I grew up in a city of 15,000 people. 50,000. Neither my parents nor my relatives had ever heard the word LGBTQE+++. I lived in an ignorant environment of this sigil and this flag, and I think it was for the best. Yet I knew that there were people who liked same-sex people, that some other were not comfortable with the gender they were born with, and it seemed much more normal to everyone. Here, in a big city, the difference is certainly accepted, but perceived as an extravagance or an originality. Where I lived, we did not care. It did not constitute the individual. And the reason is that the label does not even exist, so necessarily you cannot put it on anyone. I come to this point, that labels surrogates have often created the labels themselves, and therefore responsible for the uses and the consequences that follow. Social self-exclusion. I don't care if Paul was born a woman, or if Natalie likes girl. You LGBT are like the others. You're Paul who loves literature, Melanie who studies chemistry. You're not the G or the T of LGBT. Therefore, labels, be they on oneself or on others, do no good and give the wrong markers. I like girls. As soon as I say that, people are going to put me on the label a hetero, cis, male, white person, are going to exclude me from the debates related to gender minorities and sexual orientation. This is another thing that labels do. They divide people instead of uniting them on common causes. I want, as an individual, to defend equality, not over-labeling. Nor do I want to be remembered of having a straight label. I'm much more than that. I'm a student here, I play saxophone, I like house music. These are not labels that exist, yet that's what I am. It's easy to say when you belong to the majority of society, to say that labels do not please you. That's true, it is easy. But then think of those whose labels are in minorities. The difficulty of getting away from them to show society the essence of what you are is a hard achievement. A world without labels would be a more honest and transparent world about ourselves.
Thank you, Jan. And finally, for the opposition, I call on Felix O'Connor.